She's basically broke. Samantha's voice rang out over the dinner table with that grating, syrupy laughter she perfected in college. She couldn't even cover the pie she brought. Laughter exploded around the long oak dining table like a bomb. My mom chuckled while pretending to hush her. My dad reached for another spoonful of stuffing, pretending not to hear. My brother Eric smirked behind his wine glass. I sat in stunned silence in my parents' suburban home in Dallas, Texas, surrounded by relatives I used to trust, with mashed potatoes cooling on my untouched plate. I stared at my sister, blonde, polished Samantha, basking in the attention like she was giving a TED talk on how to gracefully humiliate your sibling. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 31. And in my family, I'm what you'd call the letdown. Not because I've done anything wrong, but because I never played their game. I never wanted their version of perfect. Samantha, on the other hand, played it like it was chess. She got a standing ovation for getting hired at a boutique PR agency in Austin after college. Me? I left my job at a Chicago firm to do something I never told them about. They think I burned out and ran back home. They don't ask questions because they don't want real answers. Rachel, honey, my mother said, tilting her head with that soft-tone condescension she'd trademarked, things have been a little rough for you, haven't they? My fingers tightened around my fork. We were just saying, she went on, as if she hadn't practiced this speech, maybe after dinner, your father and I can go over some of your bills together. We want to help. Help. That word again. I didn't look up. I didn't want to see the smug little smile tugging at the corners of Samantha's lipsticked mouth. They all thought I was struggling. That my modest little house in Fort Worth was a step above a shack. That my decision to stop dressing in pencil skirts and heels was a sign I'd given up. They thought I'd hit rock bottom. And they were wrong. So wrong. 5 years ago, I left my 6-figure salary and prestigious job because I saw something bigger. Something smarter. While they were mocking my decisions over wine and pot roast, I was investing in something they didn't understand, blockchain. Cryptocurrency was still just a whisper in 2018. People thought it was a scam, or a fad. But I'd done my research. I didn't chase get-rich-quick schemes. I studied. Obsessed. Learned the market like a second language. When Samantha was uploading selfies and complaining about office gossip, I was reading white papers at 3 a.m. I had barely $2,000 to my name after I left Chicago, but I used that to seed my portfolio. I bought Bitcoin when it dipped under $4,000. I snagged Ethereum just as it started its second rise. I bought into smaller coins no one had heard of. They thought I was a cautionary tale. And I let them. Samantha continued the show. I mean, let's be real. Rachel's always had a creative approach to life, she said, eyeing my faded cardigan. Minimalism, right? She added, like she was on a panel for lifestyle influencers. That's when something in me cracked. Not loudly. Not visibly. It was a quiet, clean break. A realization. For years, I had let their words slide off me like rain. I told myself I was above it. But maybe silence isn't noble when the people around you are writing your story for you. Maybe silence is just erasure. They didn't deserve the truth, not yet. But they were going to get it. In doses. Samantha had her moment. My mother had her pity. My father had his quiet disappointment. But none of them had a clue that the woman sitting silently in front of them had crossed the $11.5 million mark in her investment portfolio just 3 weeks ago. That I could have paid for the entire Thanksgiving dinner, the food, the wine, the house, without blinking. I looked around the table at the people who thought they knew me. They didn't know anything. But they were about to find out. 3 weeks before that Thanksgiving dinner, I was curled up on the worn corduroy couch in my tiny living room, sipping my lukewarm coffee. Same routine as always, check the markets. Update my spreadsheet, research a few low-cap coins. Except that day, something changed. The screen refreshed. And I stared at a number I had to blink twice at, $11,489,600.27. It wasn't a mistake. The slow, careful investing I'd done for half a decade had compounded into something extraordinary. My investments in Chainlink, Solana, and a few obscure tokens like Graph, Oasis Network, and Celestia had ballooned. Some of the newer ones had doubled overnight. The biggest shock. One of my moonshot bets, $12,000 into a decentralized identity project, had been acquired by a major tech conglomerate. My $12,000 was now worth $500,000. It was surreal. I sat in silence, my laptop glowing on my lap like a portal to a world only I knew existed. I looked around my little house, a scuffed floor lamp, a thrift table, 2 mismatched chairs. None of it matched the figure on my screen. But it all made sense to me. I hadn't wasted a dime on anything that wouldn't grow. I lived like I was poor because I refused to spend like I was rich. That moment should have felt euphoric, but all I felt was this deep, bone-deep loneliness. No one in my family had ever asked me about what I actually did. Not really. Not with interest. My father still thought I was doing gig work for startups. My mother believed I was consulting for bloggers, whatever that meant. And Samantha? She never asked. Not once. Instead, she called me when her rent in Austin was late. Or when she wanted to know if I could revamp her LinkedIn because you used to work in tech, right? She always made sure I knew my role, the invisible one. But I had kept records. I had screenshots. I had proof. My tax returns were clean. My LLCs were legit. I had my crypto wallet keys secured in cold storage. I had spent years building something from the ground up, brick by brick, while they sat at their tables passing judgment. And now I had a choice. I could keep pretending. Or I could change everything. I gave myself a deadline, Thanksgiving. I wouldn't show up in designer clothes or with some flashy car. I would show up exactly as they expected me, average. And then, I would wait. Let them show me who they still thought I was. If they chose cruelty over kindness, if they chose mockery over compassion, then I would make my move. That was my plan. And they played right into it. The 3 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were filled with quiet anticipation. Samantha texted me once. "Hey sis, any chance you know someone in PR who could get me into that South by Southwest networking dinner? It's kinda exclusive, but I figured maybe you have some obscure connection lol. No, how are you? No, I miss you." Just an ask, disguised as a joke. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My parents called the week before. Just a reminder to wear something nice, honey. Aunt Ruth and Uncle Jay will be there this year, and you know how Ruth likes to judge appearances. I almost laughed. My mother's voice was syrup-sweet, but I could hear the undertone of embarrassment. They didn't want me to embarrass them. They wanted me to hide my struggle. Too bad I wasn't struggling. I bought a new sweater from Target. Nothing fancy. I booked a haircut at a budget salon. I made sure everything about me screamed middle-class woman barely hanging on. They wouldn't suspect a thing. And then came the final detail. The screenshot. I opened my Chase app, navigated to my brokerage-linked checking account, and took a photo. $12,217,436.58. I saved the screenshot. Cropped it to show the logo, my name, the date, and the balance. No Photoshop. No editing. Just truth. I didn't even know if I'd use it. But something told me I'd need it. Thanksgiving Day. The air smelled like cinnamon and starch and turkey and burnt edges of homemade rolls. My dad was already on his second beer by the time I arrived, clutching a pumpkin pie I picked up from a local bakery. Samantha opened the door. "Wow. You look cozy," she said, taking in my oversized sweater and jeans. "I am cozy," I said. "Happy Thanksgiving." She gave me a hug that was all shoulder, no warmth. Inside, the usual players milled about. Aunt Ruth was already criticizing the cranberry sauce. My brother Eric bragged about refinancing his mortgage. Mom was flitting around the kitchen in heels, barking orders about plating and lighting candles. I was invisible again. They talked about the real estate market. Samantha bragged about landing a client who used to work with Netflix. Dad brought up the economy, and someone asked what I thought. I started to say something. And that's when Samantha cut me off. "Oh, Rachel doesn't really do finance. She's more of a gig worker now, right? Like those freelancers on TikTok." Laughter. Again. I smiled. That was the moment. Not yet. But soon. Very soon. Dinner started the way it always did, with politeness so sharp it could slice your skin. We gathered around my parents' long oak dining table, the same one that had witnessed decades of holidays, birthdays, and more silent arguments than I could count. The plates were set with turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, all the classics. I took my usual seat at the far end, next to Uncle Jay, who smelled like cologne and tired opinions. Samantha, of course, was front and center, directly across from our mom, already launching into her latest workplace triumph. Anyway, I basically rewrote the whole pitch, she was saying, dabbing at the corner of her mouth with a cloth napkin. My boss was blown away. He said, "Samantha, you saved the account." My parents beamed like she'd cured cancer. "That's our girl," Dad said, clinking his glass of white wine with hers. "Marketing genius," Mom added. I focused on carving my turkey. It was dry. It always was. Eric talked about some new banking software he was learning. Ruth complained about airport security. Nobody asked me anything. Not even small talk. Until Samantha did. "So, Rachel," she said, just as I took a sip of water. "Still doing whatever it is you do?" I set my glass down gently. "I do consulting," I said simply. "Digital strategy." "Oh, right." She tilted her head like I'd just said I was a puppeteer. "Very flexible schedule, huh?" I smiled tightly. "Flexible pays better than you'd think." Mom jumped in, misunderstanding me on purpose. "Sweetheart, you don't need to feel embarrassed. Everyone's journey looks different." "I'm not embarrassed," I replied. "Good," she said, in a tone that suggested she absolutely believed I should be. Samantha leaned toward Eric with a performative whisper. "You know Rachel's car doesn't even have Bluetooth? She plugs in one of those tape things. I saw it last time we met for coffee." He snorted. "Wait, seriously?" Laughter again. I sat there and absorbed it all like I always had. Quiet, passive, the family's harmless disappointment. But inside, something had shifted. The Rachel they were mocking didn't exist anymore. She hadn't existed for a long time. As dessert approached, I could feel it. The build-up. Samantha always had a finale, like some twisted magician pulling an insult out of a hat. It started with a faux compliment. "You know," she said, spooning whipped cream onto her pie, "I've got to hand it to Rachel. You really know how to live simply. I couldn't do it. That little place of yours is so minimalist. Must be nice not having to worry about bills for luxury stuff." It wasn't a compliment. It was a knife. Uncle Jay nodded like he agreed, unaware he was being used as part of the act. "Not all of us need things," I said softly. Samantha smirked. "Sure. But I mean, wouldn't it be nice to have them?" She gestured around. "A real car. Nice clothes. Furniture that wasn't from Craigslist." Eric added, "Dude, even I have a smart fridge now." "I don't need a fridge that texts me," I said. "I just need one that keeps food cold." Laughter again. This time sharper. Aunt Ruth chuckled behind her wineglass. My mother didn't intervene. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. Samantha saw the silence and went in for the kill. "Let's be honest here," she said, laying her fork down with drama. "Some of us build something real, and some of us float. And that's okay. Not everyone's meant to be successful. My hands were steady. My heart calm. I reached for my purse. It wasn't time yet. But I wanted to feel the phone. Just hold it. Just remember why I was here. But then something unexpected happened. Aunt Ruth cleared her throat. Actually, I saw a headline about a woman who made millions from cryptocurrency. Retired by 35. Crazy stuff. Samantha laughed. Oh, please. That's just internet fantasy. You know, 1 in a million. Still, Ruth shrugged. Interesting. That's when Eric looked at me. Noticed something. Maybe the way I held my spoon. Maybe the way I didn't blink when Samantha scoffed. You ever look into that stuff, Rachel? He asked. I met his eyes. I've dabbled. Samantha snorted. Oh God, don't tell me that's what you're doing. Buying fake coins in your pajamas and calling it a career. Dad shook his head. You know how these things end. People think they've got it figured out, then boom, it crashes. Mom nodded. Remember those NFT scams? All those poor kids losing their savings. This was it. The moment they told me exactly what they believed I was, a fool. You're better off getting a real job, Samantha added. Like, at a bookstore or something chill. You'd be good at that. I leaned forward. I've actually been doing quite well. The table went quiet. Eric raised an eyebrow. Like how well? I shrugged. Well enough to not worry about my rent. Or my car. Or anything, really. Oh, sweetie, Mom said gently. We know you're trying your best. Samantha leaned forward with that same smug grin she'd worn all night. You can drop the act, Rachel. No one here believes for a second you're rich. I pulled my phone out of my purse. Opened the Chase app. And smiled. Narrated by Rachel Morgan. The app loaded slowly. Or maybe my hands were just that steady. Samantha kept talking, unaware that her words were about to turn into rubble. I mean, come on, Rachel, she scoffed. You really want us to believe you're doing fine when you show up here looking like a library assistant from 1994? The table chuckled. My dad smirked behind his wine glass. My mother looked down, not out of shame but to avoid being caught encouraging the mockery. I looked at each of them. Carefully. Memorizing their faces. Then I turned my phone around and slid it into the center of the table, screen facing up. $12,217,436.58, crisp and undeniable, gleamed beneath the Chase Bank logo. The timestamp read 2:41 p.m. today. Silence fell like a bomb. Samantha's mouth dropped open mid-snark, her fork suspended in the air. My mother's eyes darted to the number, then to my face, then back to the number. Eric froze, his coffee mug halfway to his mouth. Aunt Ruth leaned in so close I thought she might faint. My dad blinked hard like he'd been unplugged from reality. This is a joke, Samantha said, laughing nervously. You photoshopped this. I stayed quiet. Just watched her squirm. Eric cleared his throat. That's the app. That's not a screenshot. That's Liv. Samantha reached for the phone like she didn't trust her own eyes. I let her pick it up. She opened the recent apps. Hit refresh. The number stayed. Her hands were shaking now. Where the hell did you get $12 million? She hissed. I earned it, I said, my voice even. 5 years ago, I left my corporate job and started investing in blockchain. Crypto, mostly. Research-based, diversified, long-term. But you live in that showbox, she sputtered. You drive a car with a cassette player. I also bought Solana at 22 cents and sold a portion at $89, I replied. I reinvested. Built a portfolio. Managed risk. I live below my means because financial freedom means more to me than appearance. My mom finally spoke, her voice shaky. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her. Because you never asked. Not really. And when you did, it was never to understand, just to judge. Aunt Ruth gave a breathy laugh. You've been sitting here letting them treat you like a failure? Yes. I smiled. Because I wanted to know if it was ever about me. Turns out it never was. It was about their idea of who I should be. Samantha stood, her face flushing red. This doesn't change anything, doesn't it? I said, tilting my head. Because you just spent the last hour telling everyone I was a joke. Now you're looking at a balance bigger than your entire net worth and then some. Eric, stunned, whispered, you could buy 3 houses in uptown Dallas with that. I could, I said. But I won't. Because I know what happens when you build a life for looks instead of substance. My dad looked furious, but also embarrassed. I don't understand, he muttered. You've been sitting on this money, why? Just to surprise us at Thanksgiving? I nodded slowly. No. To decide if I wanted to keep any of you in my life. Samantha's face twisted. Oh, cut the dramatics. You've been quiet for years and now you think you're the hero of the family just because you got lucky with internet money. I turned to her. Calm. Controlled. I made money while you mocked me. I grew while you performed. You bragged about your promotions. I built generational wealth in a 1-bedroom rental. And the saddest part is, I wasn't even hiding. I was just living a different life. But you needed someone to feel superior to, so I let you. The silence around the table grew thicker. The kind of silence you could only earn with truth. Samantha's voice broke, finally, as her performance cracked. You're still nothing without family. Then maybe, I said, you should have acted like family. I took my phone back gently. Here's what's going to happen, I said. We're going to finish this dinner. I'll help clean up. I'll be polite. And then I'm going to leave. And next year, if I come back, it'll be because I want to, not because I need your approval. Aunt Ruth looked like she wanted to applaud. Eric sat still, his face pale. My mother just stared at the pie like it had personally betrayed her. Samantha, trembling, reached for her glass of wine and knocked it over. The red liquid spread across the tablecloth like a wound. How long have you been rich? She asked. I'm not rich, I said. I'm financially free. And there's a difference. After dessert, I stood in the kitchen helping Mom rinse dishes. She didn't say much. At one point, she turned to me and whispered, "Did we make you feel small?" I looked at her, and for once, I didn't lie. Yes. She looked down. I'm sorry. I know. I dried my hands. But sorry doesn't fix years of silence. I went back into the living room, grabbed my coat, and gave Aunt Ruth a hug. Samantha sat by the fireplace, frozen. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said to the room. No one replied. Narrated by Rachel Morgan. The next morning, I woke up in my Fort Worth home to 34 missed notifications. A text from Eric. Did that really happen? A message from Aunt Ruth on Facebook. I owe you an apology. Also, wow. 5 texts from my mother. Call me when you're awake. We need to talk about yesterday. You really blindsided us. Dad is upset. I don't know what to say. Rachel, please. And the last one. We love you. Funny. That one felt more hollow than all the others combined. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a quiet breakfast, black coffee and toast with almond butter, and watched the sun rise through my tiny kitchen window. The same view I'd looked at every day for 5 years. Except now, I saw it differently. Not as a cage, but as a choice. I'd built something in this quiet. In this solitude. Something real. Something powerful. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel ashamed of it. By noon, the story had started to spread. I didn't tell a soul, but Samantha, well, Samantha had always needed an audience. She told 2 cousins what happened, probably thinking she could twist it into something humorous or pathetic. Except it didn't land that way. Because those cousins told others. And word spread fast. By Sunday afternoon, the narrative was out. Samantha mocked her sister at Thanksgiving. The sister turned out to be a multimillionaire. Samantha was living off credit cards and parent-funded rent. Even our extended relatives, people who hadn't seen me in years, started messaging me. Did you really invest in crypto before it blew up? So proud of you. I had no idea you were doing that well. That's incredible. Samantha sounds like a brat. I didn't engage. I didn't need validation. I just wanted distance. 3 days later, my mother called again. I answered. Rachel, she said, voice brittle, this has caused a lot of stir. I didn't cause anything, Mom, I said. Samantha did. Well, she's very upset. She says you embarrassed her. I had to bite my tongue from laughing. Did she tell you what she said before I showed the balance? She says she was joking. She called me worthless, Mom. She said I couldn't afford dinner. Silence. Then, the classic, she didn't mean it like that. I took a breath. You know, I used to think you didn't hear her. But now I realize you heard it. You just didn't care. That one landed. I don't want to fight, she said softly. We just didn't know you were doing so well. You didn't ask how I was doing, I corrected. You assumed. There's a difference. She sighed. Your father wants to meet. Maybe over lunch. No drama. I considered that. Lunch with the man who once told Eric, Rachel's probably going to end up working at a gas station if we're lucky. No, I said. Maybe another time. By Friday, Samantha had lost control of the narrative. Some mutual acquaintances unfollowed her online. Others left comments on her carefully curated photos. Wow, must be tough mocking your sister while living on your parents' dime. Maybe take notes from Rachel? Marketing queen or family bully? She disabled comments within hours. Then came the kicker. Her employer found out. Apparently, a co-worker at her boutique agency had a relative who was at Thanksgiving dinner. Word got back to HR. And while she wasn't fired, her promotion was quietly retracted. Not for what she said, but for what it revealed, her inability to act professionally. Her obsession with image. Her tendency to humiliate others publicly. Reputation, it turns out, is like cryptocurrency, volatile, and heavily dependent on perception. Eric texted again the following week. Still can't believe it. Honestly, good for you. He followed up with. Mom says Dad cried. That's a first. That message didn't move me. They weren't crying for me. They were crying for their own reflection. For how my success challenged their version of the story. I had always been the failure. The one to pity. The soft disappointment who wore second-hand sweaters and brought pie from the store. Now, I was a living contradiction. And people hate contradictions when they're forced to confront them. Aunt Ruth called and left a voicemail. Rachel, I just want to say I'm proud of you. I never saw it coming and I'm sorry for the way I let that dinner unfold. I should have said something. Please know that I see you now. I really do. I replayed that one a few times. Not because I believed her. But because hearing the words out loud mattered. Just a little. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I took a drive out to the lake. No phone. No music. Just silence. I parked, walked to the edge of the water, and let the cool wind blow through my jacket. This was wealth. Not the number on a screen. But the peace. The choice. The self-respect that comes from knowing I didn't need to prove anything anymore. For years, I let them narrate my story. I let Samantha shine while I swallowed my brilliance just to keep the peace. But no more. They say money changes people. That it makes them proud, arrogant, loud. But for me, it made me quiet. It made me calm. It made me free. Narrated by Rachel Morgan. A week after Thanksgiving, I started looking at properties in San Diego. Not the beachfront mansions or the glass penthouses downtown. Just a quiet, modern house up in the hills. Clean lines. Big windows. A garden with lavender and lemon trees. A view that felt like a secret. It had been on the market for 38 days. I submitted an all-cash offer that afternoon. I didn't tell anyone. No announcement. No celebratory post. No group text. Just me, an email, and a wire transfer. A part of me worried that moving would feel like running away. But as the realtor handed me the keys and I stepped onto the stone porch overlooking the Pacific, I realized something important. This wasn't escape. It was arrival. I wasn't running from anything anymore. Samantha texted the day after I closed on the house. "So, I've been thinking. We should talk." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally realized I didn't owe her a reply. Still, I was curious. I sent back a single message. About what? Her reply came in 3 dots, then a flood. "I messed up." "Okay. I went too far. I was under a lot of stress, and I took it out on you. I didn't know you were doing that well. If I had known, I never would have said those things. I guess I just always thought you needed me to look good. That's messed up, I know. But can we reset?" I reread it. Twice. It wasn't really an apology. It was a confession drenched in self-preservation. She didn't regret humiliating me, she regretted doing it to someone who turned out to be powerful. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I thought about the Rachel I used to be. The one who would have accepted breadcrumbs just to keep the illusion of family. She was gone now. I replied the next day. "I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not interested in rebuilding something based on damage control. If you want to reconnect, start by showing me who you are without the performance." She didn't answer after that. My parents called that Sunday. They'd heard I was moving to California. My father was stiff, formal. My mother danced around every sentence like she was stepping through a minefield. "We'd love to visit sometime," she said. "I'll think about it," I replied. It wasn't bitterness. It was boundaries. Because I wasn't the family disappointment anymore. And I wasn't their underdog redemption story either. I was just me. And they were going to have to learn how to meet me as an equal. Or not at all. The move to San Diego felt like exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. I bought the furniture I actually wanted, nothing extravagant, but thoughtful. Walnut and linen. Bookshelves built into the walls. A reading chair beside the window where the afternoon light made the pages glow. I adopted a rescue dog, a quiet shepherd mix with kind eyes and old injuries. I named her Clover. Together, we walked the cliffs in the mornings. No noise. No masks. Just 2 survivors enjoying peace. I met my neighbors, not as someone trying to impress them, but as someone who had nothing to prove. A retired jazz musician named Hal lived across the street. A single mom named Tasha taught at the local college. We shared coffee and stories on slow afternoons. None of them knew or cared how much money I had. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt seen without being measured. Around Christmas, I got a letter in the mail. Real mail. Handwritten. It was from Aunt Ruth. "Rachel, I've thought a lot about that night. I should have stood up. I should have said something. The truth is, I was scared of Samantha. Scared of the way she devoured attention and turned it into a weapon. Watching you stay silent for so many years, it made me complicit. I see that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just for a chance to know you better, if you'll allow it." I cried after reading that. Not because it hurt, but because it was honest. I wrote back. By New Year's, my story had faded from the gossip circuit. Samantha had returned to Instagram with inspirational quotes and photos of smoothie bowls. My parents stopped hinting at family therapy. Eric invited me to his baby shower. I politely declined. I was no longer the black sheep. I was the one who walked away and didn't come back. But here's the thing no one tells you: walking away doesn't mean you're lonely. Sometimes, it's the first step toward finding your real people. I started mentoring a few women in a crypto forum I used to frequent back in the early days. One of them was a single mom from Ohio. Another was a college dropout trying to build an app on decentralized identity. I didn't give them money. I gave them time, perspective, warnings, and belief. Because I remembered what it felt like to be underestimated, ignored, written off because you weren't loud or polished or pleasing. They reminded me of me. And I wasn't going to let the world silence them the way mine had tried to silence me. People asked me, "Why didn't you flaunt it sooner?" And I told them the truth. Because the people who matter will notice you without the spotlight. And the ones who need you to perform for their approval, they were never really clapping for you, just for the version of you that made them feel superior. Narrated by Rachel Morgan. Spring came early in San Diego. By March, the lavender was in bloom. I'd walk past it each morning with Clover trotting by my side, the hills around us fogged in gentle mist. Everything smelled like new beginnings. I was standing on my back patio one morning, coffee in one hand, a fresh journal in the other, when I realized I hadn't thought about Samantha in weeks. She used to live in my head like rent was free. Every jab, every smirk, every public takedown played on loop for years. And now, gone. Not because I forgave her, but because I finally reclaimed the space where her voice used to echo. A month later, she reached out again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a video message. Her face was bare. No makeup. She looked tired. The confident fire I once envied had dimmed to something smaller. Softer. She said, "Hey, Rachel. I don't know if you'll even open this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted to say, I watched your silence for years and mistook it for weakness. Turns out, it was strength I didn't understand. I humiliated you. I did it publicly. And I'm sorry." She paused. Her eyes darted away, then back. "You were never the failure. I think I was just terrified of what your success would reveal about me. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I matter, but you already knew you did. That's the difference." Another pause. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to hear that. From me. Not through someone else." The video ended. And I sat there, blinking into the sunlight, feeling nothing I expected. No rage. No pity. No satisfaction. Just a strange, gentle peace. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was punishing her, but because I needed time to ask myself, what do I actually want from her now? The truth. Nothing. Her approval didn't matter anymore. Neither did her remorse. But I appreciated the attempt. It was the first time she'd ever spoken to me without trying to win. That was worth something. Later that week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just a plain brown envelope. Inside was an old photo. Us, me and Samantha, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She had her arm wrapped around my shoulders like she owned me. We were wearing matching Easter dresses. I was squinting at the sun, she was mid-laugh. Taped to the back was a note. We were sisters long before we were rivals. I lost sight of that. I hope someday we find it again. There were no hashtags. No inspirational quotes. Just a small, messy truth. I put the photo in a drawer. Not to forget, but to remember when I'm ready. By the end of spring, I had done something I never thought I'd do. I invited my parents to visit. Not for a reunion. Not for a performance. Just to see me. To walk the neighborhood with me. To eat dinner on my deck. To meet the version of me they never took time to know. They arrived cautiously, my mother holding a bouquet of store-bought lilies, my father looking at the ocean like it offended him. They walked through the house like they were in a museum, touching the edges of my life with awe and disbelief. "You live here," my father said flatly. "I do," I replied. He nodded slowly. "It's beautiful." That was the closest thing to pride I'd ever heard from him. That night, over grilled fish and white wine, my mother asked, Do you miss Dallas? I shook my head. Not really. I think I mostly missed the version of me I thought I had to be there. She looked away. We didn't always treat you fairly, she said quietly. I didn't let her off the hook. No, you didn't. Silence. But, I added, I've also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean I have to shrink myself again. My dad cleared his throat. We see that now. Before they left. My mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "You've built a beautiful life. I hope we can be part of it, in whatever way you'll let us." I didn't promise anything. But I nodded. Small steps. New rules. As summer approached, I did something bold. I finally allowed myself to be known. Not by family. By me. I hired a financial planner, set up a trust for community grants to support women-led startups, and launched a newsletter about smart investing for underrepresented voices. I started small. Just 50 subscribers. Then 500. Then 5,000. I wasn't trying to be famous. I was just trying to be useful. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for being good at something. Sometimes, people still ask about that Thanksgiving. They want the drama. The MIC drop moment. The wealth reveal. But the real story wasn't the money. It never was. It was what the money revealed. That people who claim to love you will still discard your worth if it doesn't show up in the packaging they recognize. That silence can be strength. But silence can also be a slow erasure if you let it last too long. That power doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it just has to be yours. As I sit here now on the deck of a house I bought with my own mind, watching the sky turn gold, I think of the younger me. The one in thrift store sweaters. The one who brought pie to dinners where she was the punchline. The one who endured humiliation not because she was weak, but because she hoped people would eventually see her. I see her now. And she wasn't a failure. She was a builder. A visionary. A silent, patient force. And now, she's me.